Today's saying is, failing to plan is planning to fail. The architect had perfect blueprints, $6 million in funding, and a 200-room hotel on the coastline. Then the soil report arrived. The land was unstable. His partner said, "Just build, we'll fix it later." He disagreed. He lost the contract. The hotel was built anyway. 3 months later, the rains came. Hello and welcome to Sense and Sound English. I'm Julian Rivet. Thank you for joining me. Today we're examining why this proverb is dangerously incomplete. The best way to learn English is through real stories and paying close attention to the context. So let's step back into that story. The architect was right. The hotel shifted. The foundation cracked, and the structure was declared unsafe. Investor lawsuits followed. But being right didn't save his career. His reputation was destroyed. He never worked on a major project again. This brings us to our real subject, Marcus Webb, 43 years old, Harvard MBA, 7 successful startups. He was known as the man who always had a plan. His latest venture was a logistics company, same-day delivery in major cities. The business model was elegant. The projections were conservative. He had a detailed 5-year roadmap with quarterly milestones. He called it Operation Compass. Every direction already determined, every risk already calculated. The investors loved him. The employees respected him. The competition feared him. But here's the thing about Marcus. He spent so much time planning the path that he forgot to walk it. He would run meetings where the team reviewed the plan, not the progress, the plan itself. Week after week, the same slides, the same projections, the same colorful charts. "We're on track," he would say, but they weren't. I want you to think about the word failure. In corporate America, failure is not an accident. Failure is evidence. It reveals what you didn't see, what you didn't anticipate, what you didn't bother to consider. This is called strategic blindness, and it's the #1 killer of ambitious projects. Marcus had planned for everything except the possibility that his plan might be wrong. He planned for supply chain disruptions. He planned for competitor responses. He never planned for the moment when the plan itself would need to change. The assistant who worked in the office next to his, a quiet woman named Elena, watched this unfold. Elena was not an architect. She was not an MBA. She had a degree in anthropology from a state university. But she had something Marcus lacked. She read the daily operations reports, the real ones, the ones that arrived at 6 a.m. and described the actual problems. Delays, broken trucks, misrouted packages, disgruntled drivers. She started making notes, small adjustments, alternative delivery routes, backup suppliers. She built what she called a flexible framework. Marcus dismissed it. "That's not the plan," he said. Elena nodded and kept her framework private. Here is a paradox of preparation. The more detailed your plan, the more vulnerable you become to unexpected events. Because you've invested so much emotional and intellectual capital in the blueprint that you cannot abandon it. You become the prisoner of your own foresight. This is a sunk cost fallacy in action. We refuse to change direction because we've already invested in the current direction, even when all evidence suggests we should pivot. The architect, you see, wasn't wrong about the foundation. He was wrong about everything else. He saw the problem clearly. He couldn't see the solution. He was so attached to professional judgment that he couldn't negotiate. He couldn't compromise. He couldn't find a middle ground. His partner, who built the unsafe hotel, was equally wrong. She saw the speed of delivery. She didn't see the long-term consequences. Both planned. Both failed. One failed because he planned too rigidly. The other failed because she planned too hastily. Now, let's return to Marcus. His logistics company was growing, but not as fast as the plan predicted. The first quarter was fine. The second quarter showed minor deviations. By the third quarter, the numbers were clearly off track. Marcus increased the pressure. More meetings, more reviews, more planning sessions. He created subplans for the main plan. He developed contingency plans for the contingency plans. Elena watched the team's morale deteriorate. She saw the drivers leave. The warehouse managers stopped caring. The customers complained more frequently. One afternoon, Marcus called an emergency meeting. "We need to reassess," he said. "We're missing something." Elena spoke up. "We're missing the actual operation." The room went quiet. "You built a beautiful plan," she continued, "but you never tested it. You never adjusted it. You never stopped planning and started doing." Marcus stared at her. Then he laughed. "You think improvisation is the answer? You think we can just make it up as we go?" "I think," Elena said carefully, "that the plan was the first step, not the destination." She shared her flexible framework. The small adjustments, the alternative routes, the backup suppliers. Not a new plan, a living document, one that changed weekly based on what actually worked. Marcus rejected it. "This has no predictive value," he said. "That's the point," Elena replied. 3 months later, Marcus was fired. The board, impatient with the slow growth and declining morale, replaced him with a turnaround specialist. The specialist immediately implemented Elena's framework. Within 6 months, the company was profitable. Within a year, it was the fastest growing logistics firm in the region. The specialist kept Elena as his deputy. He asked her to formalize her approach. "It's not a plan," she said. "It's a system. A plan tells you what to do. A system tells you how to respond to what happens." She called it adaptive architecture. Marcus, meanwhile, went on to write a book about his failure. He called it the roadmap trap. It became a bestseller in business circles. He made more money from the book than he ever did from the company. There's irony here, but we'll get to that later. Let me share something with you that most people miss about this saying. The phrasing is not planning to fail, as in you will fail because you didn't plan. It's planning to fail, as in you are actively preparing for failure. Because that's what failure is. A plan, an alternative outcome, a path not taken. When you don't plan, you're not preparing for failure. You're preparing for improvisation. You're leaving the door open for surprise, for discovery, for the unexpected solution. The problem with failing to plan is planning to fail, is that it assumes failure is always bad. It assumes success is always planned. It ignores the reality of complex systems. In complex systems, failures provide information. They reveal the hidden variables, the assumptions that were wrong, the relationships you didn't understand. This is called productive failure, and it's the secret to genuine learning. Let me tell you about the most successful company you've never heard of. A European manufacturing firm that produced high-precision components for medical devices. They had no strategic plan, no 5-year roadmap, no quarterly projections. They had a simple rule. If it works, keep doing it. If it doesn't, stop and figure out why. Then adjust. Their CEO called it incremental adaptation. He was asked once how he planned for growth. "I don't," he said. "I plan for learning." The company grew steadily for 3 decades. They acquired competitors. They expanded into new markets. They became the industry standard for reliability. Their competitors, with their elaborate plans and detailed projections, were acquired or bankrupt within 10 years. "I don't have a plan," the CEO said at a conference. "I have a direction and a system for staying on course." A plan is a fantasy. A system is reality. Now, here's the second limit of the saying. It assumes that planning and doing are separate activities. First you plan, then you execute. This is the standard management model, the waterfall approach. But reality is not a waterfall. Reality is a river. It changes course constantly. It creates unexpected eddies and currents. You can map the river. You can measure its speed, but you cannot predict its path. You can only navigate. The word strategy originally came from the Greek strategia, meaning generalship, the art of leading an army. But the most successful generals didn't just plan. They adapted. They read the terrain. They responded to enemy movements. They adjusted tactics in real time. This is the difference between a plan and a strategy. A plan is static. A strategy is dynamic. A plan tells you what to do when things go well. A strategy tells you what to do when things go wrong. The lesson here is not that planning is bad. The lesson is that planning is never enough. You need something else. What is that something else? It's called metacognition. Thinking about your thinking. Questioning your assumptions. Testing your beliefs. Being willing to abandon the plan when the plan stops working. Marcus couldn't do this. His identity was tied to the plan. Questioning the plan meant questioning himself. He couldn't separate his self-worth from his strategic decisions. Elena could. She saw the plan as a tool, not an identity. When the tool didn't work, she adjusted it. She wasn't attached to her original ideas. The architect couldn't separate his professional pride from the foundation design. His partner couldn't separate her career ambition from the schedule. Both were trapped by their own psychological investments. This is the third limit of the saying. It treats failure as an outcome rather than a process. It ignores the emotional dimension of planning, the pride, the ego, the fear of being wrong. When you say, failing to plan is planning to fail, you're framing planning as a moral obligation. You're implying that failure is a character flaw, that people who don't plan are irresponsible, lazy, foolish. But here's what we've seen from our stories. The best planners sometimes fail. The best improvisers sometimes succeed. The difference is not in the planning. The difference is in the approach. Marcus planned everything and failed. Elena planned very little and succeeded. The European manufacturing company had no plan and dominated its industry. The architect had a perfect plan for the foundation and lost his career. Let me tell you about the phrase itself. Failing to plan is planning to fail. It has a pleasing symmetry, a neat rhetorical structure. It sounds wise. It sounds absolute. It sounds like a law of nature. But language is not reality. Words are not laws. Proverbs are not truth. They are shortcuts, mental shorthand, efficient ways to communicate general ideas. They work well in conversation. They work poorly in complex situations, because complex situations don't respond to shortcuts. They demand detailed attention. They require careful differentiation. They punish simplicity. The world, as a philosopher said, is not a problem to be solved. It is a mystery to be experienced. And mysteries do not come with roadmaps. They come with questions. Now let's speak directly to you, the viewer, the learner, the person who came here expecting a lesson about English and instead received a lesson about the limits of human foresight. Here's what I want you to remember. The saying is not wrong. It's incomplete. Like all proverbs, like all received wisdom, like all inherited truths. Yes, you should plan. Yes, preparation matters. Yes, strategy is important. But these are tools, not truths. They are useful techniques, not universal laws. The real failure is not the absence of a plan. The real failure is the absence of awareness, the inability to see the plan as provisional, the unwillingness to learn from experience, the refusal to adapt. The real failure, in other words, is to believe that any saying can capture complexity of life. Marcus wrote his book. He gave his talks. He became wealthy by describing his own failure. He called the book The Roadmap Trap. It sold 1 million copies. Elena still works at the logistics company. She runs operations in 5 countries now. She earns less than Marcus. She never wrote a book. She doesn't give talks. She just adapts every day to every new challenge. I don't need a plan, she said to me once. I need to stay awake. This is her philosophy. Stay awake. Pay attention. Notice what works. Discard what doesn't. Keep moving. The architect, by the way, eventually returned to work. Smaller projects. Less ambitious. Less profitable. He learned something. He stopped planning every detail. He started collaborating with builders. He began asking questions, not providing answers. I was certain, he told me. Certainty is the enemy. The story you just heard, the architect, Marcus, Elena, the European manufacturing firm, they are all real, different names, different details, but real situations, real people, real consequences. They illustrate a truth that most people miss, a truth that is both simple and profound. Preparation matters, but flexibility matters more. Planning matters, but adaptation matters more. The map matters, but the terrain matters most. Today's saying was, failing to plan is planning to fail. You now know that this is true only in a limited sense. It's useful for motivating action. It's useful for encouraging diligence. It's useful for reminding us to think ahead. But it's dangerous when treated as an absolute, when applied without nuance, when used to judge others, when allowed to become a substitute for actual thinking. The true wisdom is not to plan more. The true wisdom is to learn faster, to adapt more quickly, to stay curious, to remain humble, to accept that plans are guesses about the future. And the future, as we know, is always surprising. Thank you for listening to this episode of Sense and Sound English. My name is Julian Rivet. I hope this story gave you more than just English vocabulary. I hope it gave you a way to think, a lens to see, a question to carry with you, because that's what language is, ultimately, a way to think, a way to see, a way to question. The English language is full of sayings. They are all useful. They are all incomplete. Use them but don't trust them. Learn them but don't worship them. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and remember, the most dangerous plan is the one you never question. I'll see you in the next story.